It is an exciting day for us once more. We are at the Durban ICC as BRICS Skills Development, Technology and Innovation Working Group. We hold our information sessions to bring to the people information around our journey as it leads to Russia, who is chairing this year's BRICS Summit. So today's session was all about what we do as the working groups within the business councils, particularly in the manufacturing space. And we've heard a lot about the skills that are needed in the smart manufacturing productions and so forth. We were able to share with the people the skills that they can socialize amongst university graduates, amongst SMMEs, among small businesses that are interested.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zamakumala, and it is a great honor to be your MC for today. Just here to engage, learn from one another, and just make sure that, as mentioned before, we equip ourselves with the tools and knowledge of learning how to create a greater and brighter future.
Like India and China and most of Africa, we've got huge rural areas, you know. And in China, they've perfected a system of converting rural areas into manufacturing centers, which is what happened in Kwastebe. That vision was perfect, but I think probably it was a vision that came early, because we've destroyed Kwastebe, we burned everything, the political upheavals that they burnt everything down. But if you are a manufacturer, which I am, the first thing that you want cheap land, you want an inexpensive labor, and then you want services, water, electricity, supply, and also people, you know, labor that is ready to work. And if you had to take those parameters, just those variables, you put yourself in KZN rural areas, not in Jacobs, Hammersdale. That's why those places are becoming distribution centers, because they're not supposed to be. You know, Jacobs is, you know, it's very urban, it's very expensive. It's an urban manufacturing hub, so it's manufacturing very expensive things. So I think where we really lack as a, maybe it's policy coordination or it's lack of intention, is to be intentional about trying to make this thing happen. Now, in my small scale in the companies that, or in the areas of my influence, we set up a manufacturing training center in partnership with Follows in Richards Bay. And people thought we were crazy. They said, what? Why? I mean, people in my industry, footwear manufacturing, they said, no, why don't you go to Pietermaritzburg, Pinetown, and you'll be able to make shoes quicker there. But 5 years later, we've trained over 300 people, young people, in skills that they've never had before. You know, now they have got their own skills, they can make shoes. Some of them are running our factory in Stanger, people that didn't have very good metric when I started with them, but because the factory is also a training institution. Because we can't rely, I just find that in South Africa, maybe in other BRICS countries it's not the case, you know, we can't really wait for education interventions. Technology is such a key in a developing country. You know, TVET colleges are supposed to be the first thing. Yep. First thing that you think about. But you go to a TVET college, you know, they've got NCV training, and then they've got a skills development training with the support of the CETA. It's all a disjointed mess. You know, and you go to Germany, which is, as I hear, Germany is a benchmark, I think, for manufacturing and training, especially at vocational level. Kids finish education like what you were talking about earlier. You know, they finish high school education with some kind of skills expertise of sort. You know, it could be motor mechanics or whatever you call it. You know, it's not something that you have to now fail matric, because what we deal with, we pick up kids that have not been accepted at DUT or have not had enough marks to, you know, they all have 80% in life orientation and 40% in maths lit and 90% in Zulu and nothing else for South Africa. So basically they don't know anything. So we have to invest in training them, which is something that's supposed to be done by government. I think the first thing that is important in skills development is introducing skills development in basic education. It must be a basic education outcome. It mustn't be something that is done at TVET or while we're waiting for TVET, I don't know. But I mean, I think it should be for South Africa, in a South African situation, so that kids that don't have the intellectual muscle to grasp, you know, other very heavy theoretical subjects will be able, and they do learn, they'll be able to have a practical application of what the learning is, and maybe they'll end up doing very well. I think that's where we're supposed to be.
I think we need to also go forward leveraging what our counterparts have done well. We need to have the same standard in South Africa as well, because we are also BRICS Plus. So we need to have to understanding that if it is made in a BRICS Plus standard, it has the same stamp here. So we want to encourage that. We want to bring that to the fore. That is what these working groups, I think, can come out with resolutions of that. If we are having in our TVET colleges, you know, a level that is not satisfactory, then we need to be actually collaborating with our counterparts to bring up the standard, so that our TVET colleges are teaching the same thing here, the same thing in India, the same thing in the same way, and producing the same high level of excellence in all of our students.
It reminds me of your skills passport. Because there's been a lot of discussion in my part within BRICS, the skills development and adaptive technology innovation, where we focused on saying how do we standardize some of the training, more especially in TVET, so that we're able to leverage some of the advanced knowledge that we've got in BRICS and other parts. So it's been very interesting to actually see some of the conversations that are happening in different industries around that. And I'm sure, I mean, skills passport is something that might be tabled in this particular, in the chairmanship of Russia. But those are the kind of things that I know all the countries that are counterparts within BRICS are really prepared to do. I mean, there is a skills training-based initiative that I think is being done now in China, and it's in agriculture IoT. I mean, Go Digital have brought in some of this machinery and content around it, which is kind of things, again, that say, how do we move our training base into be higher around the content that is international standards and within the experience that's got there.
So if we look at the skills like we mentioned, there's an issue in terms of the relevance of education. It's a very serious issue. So we need to look at education models that works. Talent-driven education, we need to consider that. Do not waste children's time, making them things that they're not talented in. It's a waste of time. Every child, naturally, very intelligent. They're very intelligent human beings. I've dealt with them as a minister in a church. They can do anything. They do amazing things. But it's what you give them. If they're bored, they're not going to get down. And you'll be surprised that they're not going to be mathematicians. He's a musician. You can't make him a mathematician. You know, if he's a manufacturer, you see it already. By the age of 2 years that they are stitching things together, putting things up. That's where you need to identify the talent and be able to run with it, put them into manufacturing, and they can do wonders there. So I think that's in terms of education model. Also, like where we are right now is we're producing a lot of graduates, right, that are not employed. Let's do something about that. Let's identify their talents at their point where they are, and filter them in these skills training programs that we have opportunity in. Millions of them as well that are available, that are talented. They did a program because they were told that they will prosper. It's a good career, you know, when you can be a lawyer, can be a doctor, but the guy is realized after the fact that this is not me. So why don't we look at those thousands of the graduates that are coming out of the universities every year and be able to filter them in relevant areas where they have got interest, you know. So so also when we look at our competitiveness, right? The other issue that we need to seriously consider, which our BRICS partners are considering, is scaling up.
Yes.
Right? We can complain or have issues with India supplying medical devices or dominating in the IT, but there has been an investment.
Yes.
And what we're talking about is India overtook China in terms of billions that are sitting there. And it's a coordinated force of people working together towards a common goal, coordinated programs. So if we don't scale up and we think through the lens of our borders that are very limited, you only be looking at 57 million or 62 million population of South Africa wanting to compete at a trade level with a 1.2 billion.
Yeah.
So let's be practical about it. Let's use what has worked before. South Africa right now is at a pivotal time to be able to influence Africa the way it did in the early 1800s. So let's think about that. How, for example, now we've got Egypt, we have Ethiopia, how we can synergize quickly with those ones and be able to roll out these projects as well, from skills perspective, from manufacturing perspective, and we can leapfrog very easily. I can tell you, if you're a manufacturer here in South Africa, when you think about market dynamics, business, proper business, the moment you step out of the borders of South Africa to go into these huge populations in Africa, then you become a billionaire. I think this is what I can just say in a nutshell, but I'm glad the stakeholders that are here are very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think if those linkages that I'm talking about, we pursue them, we will be able to leapfrog. So the leapfrog starts here with everybody's contribution. Thank you.
Doctor, you want to say something?
Okay, just to follow up to what she just indicated in terms of IoT sensors. It is quite an intriguing subject to make sure that the manufacturing sector has those equipment for sensors to get real time in terms of the production processes and ultimately optimize the resources utilization. So what I can say, coming from a CETA in conclusion, because I think I've said a lot today, is that digital training, skills training is important. If we want to position ourselves in terms of digital technology, we need to have the right skills for the sector. And those adequate skills will help the workforce for them to work optimally and effectively. And when someone works optimally and effectively, we are able now to compete with our counterparts in terms of making sure that we produce, firstly, the quality, because in order for us to meet international standards, we need to produce, manufacture, if it's in the food sector, manufacture food that is of that particular quality standards.
So I'm Ravesha Govender. I work for eThekwini Municipality in the Economic Development Unit. So the department that I work for is called Industry Development. My responsibility lies with supporting the manufacturing sector. We know that our priority manufacturing sectors in our city is chemicals, automotive, clothing and textiles, furniture, and footwear and leather. These are our priorities and hence the reason why we support them. My department supports 12 sectors and 5 of these are in manufacturing. We create special purpose vehicles where these are funded by the municipality to then support industry. And a lot of the time we have to justify why do we need to support business. But it is because of the contribution of that business that supports, that gives life to the revenue of the city in terms of rates, in terms of utilities like our electricity and water, and that's what keeps the engines of the city running. So hence the need to support business. whether it is large, medium, or small business. So we've created these industry clusters where we run specific programs, and you know, in 2023 we produced a manufacturing report, a state of manufacturing report, and we found that while KZN contributes 21% of the national manufacturing GDP to the country's economy, 15 or 20 years ago, this was almost sitting at possibly greater than 30%. So over the years, we have deindustrialized. And you know, there's many challenges. So we just did a case study of what has really happened in our city, in Durban. And we found that there were 3 key challenges, apart from many others, that stood out and that were prevalent. So number 1, it was infrastructure and logistics. We found that our infrastructure and logistics has degraded in so many of our manufacturing industrial sites, like Jacobs. You spoke about Clearwood. Yes, it is an expensive, high rateable area. However, you know, that area hasn't been prioritized, and it is just, and it, as a result, has become more of a logistics hub as opposed to a manufacturing hub. Second challenge was companies are not competitive enough. There's not enough they're not productive enough, they don't have the capability and the capacity, and they are not competitive. And third, we found that there's an issue with skills. We know that we hear all the time that our unemployment rate is so high, and there's so many graduates emerging from our TVETs, our technicons, and our universities. However, the skills are mismatched to what industry needs. And we found that there is a huge gap in what is required by industry.